Hello everyone. In today's outline, we'll be understanding how web pages load, the whole architecture around websites, the client server model, the HTTP, HTTPS protocols, and the rest. So embrace yourself and let's get started. So the architecture. So architecture refers to the structure and organization of various components that make up a web browser. So architecture basically basically means structures coming together to make up. So let's take a house for instance. When they say what's the architecture of the house, so we have the ground floor, we have the kitchen, we have the washroom, the bedroom. So all that forms up the architecture to make up the house. So that's what we are talking about here. So it encompasses the design and implementation of web services, databases, servers, and client server technologies. So that's how the architecture is. So in terms of housing architecture, we have the kitchen and the rest. And so with the web, we have the design, we have the web services, the databases, servers, and client side technologies. So how does it work? So a user interacts with the web application, the website, and then the client sends an HTTP request to the web server. That's so after the request is being sent to the web server, the server receives the request and processes it and routes it to the appropriate application. Then the database, that's if it's needed. You see some systems, so let's say a web app needs a database, but a website doesn't. Some websites don't, but web apps need databases. So if data is needed, the backend will interact with the database to receive and store the information based on the request. Then the server generates a response and sends it back to the client. Then the browser receives the response and renders the content for the user to see. So these are the steps that goes on before we get responses on our web pages. And the good thing about all that is it is fast. So we don't get to see the numerous activities that's taking place here. All we know is it's just coming fast. So that's the beauty of it. And one may ask who the client is. The client is the browser. Yes. So the client is the browser. So let's have that in mind. This is the client server model. So the client server model is a network architecture that divides tasks between providers of a resource known as servers. So that's just it. The client server. So a client and a server. So the client is you using the browser, and then the server is like where the request is going to be taken from. So they working together to provide resources is what the client server model is all about. So some key components in the client server model. We have the client and then we have the server. So a client is a device or application that requests services or resources from a server. So example of a client are browsers. So they request services. So you input your service into the browser and then it requests it from the server. So a server is a powerful computer or application that provides resources, data or services to clients. So yeah, the server, so the picture says it. We have the server that's like out there, and then all we need to do is just input our information that we need. And then the browser, which is our client, will communicate with the server, which has the information, and then we get the information that's been shown out there, the information requested. So how does the client server model work? So first, you have to request an initiation. So the client initiates a request by sending a message to the server. This can be an HTTP request for a web page or an API for call for API call for data. So the API, like we said the other time, stands for application programming interface. So two applications communicating with each other for better streams of information. So that's the API. That's what the API does. So after you've given your request, like say you've typed Google, or let's just say yeah, you've typed Google. So the processing, so after you've given that request, now the request is sent to the server, and then the server receives the request, processes it, and prepares a response. So you've typed Google, it goes into the server processes it, and then gives you a response. And so the response delivery, so the server sends the response back to the client. The response could be an HTML page, a JSON data, or any other format. So we have formats that the information can come in. We have HTML, we have the JSON, and we have other formats as well. So all this, as the practicals come in, we'll take a look at all the data formats that we have. We have the client. So after the response is delivered, then the client receives it. So the client receives the response and processes it, presenting the information to the user in a readable or interactive format. Yes, so these are the steps. You input a request, the request is processed, you get a response. That's the server sending the response to the client, and then now the client presents the response in a better style. Yeah. So a take home assignment, go and research on the advantages of this client server model. Go and research on it and see how important it is in web development. So we have the HTTP and HTTPS protocols. So HTTP is the foundational protocol used for transmitting data over the web. It facilitates communication between clients and servers. So the HTTP is a protocol for transmitting data, and then HTTPS is a secure version of HTTP that's providing security, an additional level of security through encryption. So you take a look at some websites and then they write not secure. That's because they don't have another additional layer of security. That's they don't have the HTTPS. So even if you take a look at your browser and search something, you see that most of the time they write HTTPS column slash slash www dot so and so dot com. But then if it doesn't have that extra layer of security, they just write HTTP column slash slash. So that one is the normal protocol without security in addition. So that's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. So the hypertext transfer protocol, that's the HTTP, its duty is to request and give responses. So a client sends an HTTP request to a server for resources, and then the server processes the request and sends it back to the HTTP response containing the requested data. So that's the duties of the HTTP. This is just to request information and then goes and get the information and brings back the response. And then we have the HTTPS, which is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. So the difference is secure and the other is not secure. So this one uses SSL and then TLS. So the SSL socket layer and then the TLS transport layer security. The SSL secure socket layer. So what it does is data exchange between the client and server is encrypted. So that one has to do with security. So as we all know, information is very vital in our age here. So every information that's put out there must be secure from hackers and others. So in order to do that, you need HTTPS to do that. That's adding an extra layer of security so your information is not accessed by anyone, any random person. And its duty again is to ensure data integrity. Since the data is encrypted, providing security, You see, people cannot tamper with it or eavesdrop. Take, for example, we have a president. He's being secured 24/7. You see, no one gets to hear. So he has, maybe he's having a meeting in one of his offices, and then someone just wants to hear something. It's not possible because he has security guarding him that will prevent you from listening to his conversation. That's what the HTTPS does. And so, in conclusion, the HTTP facilitates basic data transfer, and then the HTTPS enhances security, making it essential for protecting user data and ensuring safe online transactions. It's very necessary, especially when money is involved. When money and information are involved, it's a crucial game. So let's take note of that. And so we are asking, what are web browsers? We all know what web browsers. We all have seen what web browser. Okay, let's say this. We've all used web browsers before. One way or another, you've used a web browser before. So on iOS we have Safari, the others we have UFC, we have Brave, we have Opera, Firefox, Chrome, and the rest. So let's see this. So a web browser is a software application that enables users to access, retrieve, and view content of the web. So the web browser, you want to view something on the web. That's the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web. If you want to view something there, you need something to help you view it. And that thing to help you view and access the data there is a browser. So without the browser, you cannot go on the World Wide Web. Yes. So how does it work? So first, the user enters a URL and then into the browser's address bar. So we've okay, if you haven't, let's try this. So first off, the user enters what he wants into the browser. So let's input something here. So we've inputted what we want to see. And then what does it do next? So the DNS resolution comes in afterwards. So when we inputted the Google was the URL, so the uniform resource locator. No, that's the address bar where we inputted the URL. Okay. So the DNS resolution deals with, so uh, we typed Google, right? But then with the machines, they don't understand like the plain English, the human readable English. So it's being converted into IP addresses. So we've always heard someone say machines understands the languages of zeros and ones. Yes, so that's how things go into play here. So the DNS resolution comes in. It translates the human readable URL into an IP address that identifies the server hosting the desired content. So IP addresses are unique identifiers for each information, or so you see each machine or each machine has an IP address, or each information has an IP address in terms of the technological era. So the IP address is to locate the right information. So let's say this. You are sending a letter to my house. If you don't know my address, there's no way the letter will get to me. Even though you've written the letter for me, if it is not written towards my address, there's no way the letter gets to me. So that's why IP addresses are very necessary in terms of web development, because without the IP addresses, information goes to the wrong place. Yes. And so after the IP address has been it has given the IP, it has converted a human readable into IP addresses. Then it the uses the unresolved IP address. The browser sends an HTTP or HTTP request to the web server asking for the specific resource. So after it has been changed from human readable, that's the Google, to 0012.92 this, it now asks for a specific resource. That's the specific resource we are looking for, is the Google right there. And then afterwards, the web server processes the request and sends back an HTTP request. So after it has gotten what we asked for, it now sends back a a response. It's only right for it to send back a response, because it's kind of like I've asked you something and then you're keeping quiet. It doesn't work that way. You have to respond. And so when it responds, the browser receives the response and begins to render the page. So rendering the page is just saying showing the page. Yes, showing, that's rendering, showing the page. And then now the layout and painting. So the browser calculates the layout of elements on the page, determining their size and position, and then paints the pixels to display the content on the screen. So that's one use of a browser again. So when it comes to, when we are talking about layouts, so each screen has a layout of 12. All this, we'll get into it when we are writing the actual codes. So screens have a column layout of 12. So the so sometimes you see that some information are to the right, some are to the left. So all this is because of the code be written for that website or system. So the browser needs to get the actual positioning, or the intended positioning of every layout of elements on the page. So that's what it does. And then now it handles resources and then user interaction. So after the layout is done, now we get to handle resources, and then the user interacts with the system again, and then the process starts all over again. So now what is web hosting? So after you are done writing the codes, you need to host it. Some say deploy. So web hosting is a service that allows individuals or organizations to make their website accessible via the internet. So HTTP is a is a secure version of HTTP providing an additional layer of security through encryption. So web hosting is a service, so like making your work accessible through the internet. That's web hosting. So the key components of web hosting, we have the server, which is the physical or virtual machine that stores website data and serves it to users. Servers are always online, ensuring that websites are accessible 24/7. They do non-sleep, non-stop, because if servers are supposed to be working on and off, that means sometimes there's no way your website will be accessible. So they are always on. And then we have the storage. So web hosting providers allocate space on their servers for website files, including the images, the videos, the databases. So yes, all web hosting services have a storage file. It's only fair and it's only right for them to have storage files. Is storage, yeah. Storage spaces, let me say it that way. Storage spaces, yes. So when your code is uploaded there, it keeps it and then it saves it, so it doesn't, yeah, it's just right for it to have a storage space. And then our bandwidth. A bandwidth refers to the amount of data that can be transferred between the server and users over a given time. So the bandwidth affects how quickly a website loads and how many visitors it can handle simultaneously. So some say you have a low bandwidth. When you have a low bandwidth, like information doesn't come faster. So one has a high bandwidth, one has a lower bandwidth. The one with the higher bandwidth gets, so you see sometimes maybe you are loading a page with a friend and then his comes earlier than yours. That's because he has a high bandwidth and you have a low bandwidth. So sometimes it depends on the location you are. Sometimes it depends on the service provider you're using, the service, and all other factors. And then after that, we have the domain name. So while web hosting services stores the website files, a domain name is used to access the site. So in as much as your code was written in um, HTML or anything else, now we need a name so that each time someone goes to that name, we can just get the information that you have written in your HTML. So that's what the domain name does. So you have, so mostly domain names are, you've seen a lot of domain names. Let's just take a look at one. So this is a domain name. This is a domain name, https www dots. Let's go back. You see, so after the Google, we have https. So that's the domain name. And we've seen the S there for a reason. So the S is meaning secured. So that's okay. So all have S. All have S. Yes. This one too. This one too. Okay. So that's the domain names. So these are the domain names. And then we have types of web hosting. So we have the shared. So the shared deals with multiple websites share the same server resources. Even though it is cost effective, it can lead to slow performance if one site consumes too much bandwidth. So it's just no, it's just normal because two people sharing one thing or a lot of people sharing one thing, it brings uh, over dependence on a thing, which leads to some slowness and then some one or two issues. So it's just fair that it has it can lead to slower performance if one site consumes more bandwidth. And then we have the dedicated hosting, which deals with the client's rent an entire server for their exclusive use. This provides maximum performance, security, and control, but at a higher cost. So the shared deals with you sharing the platform with other websites, and then the dedicated is like it's just for one person. Of course, it will be expensive, but then it will give better results than the shared hosting. So we have the managed hosting. So this hosting provides it manages the server including maintenance, updates, and security. It is ideal for those who want to focus on their websites without worrying about technical details. So it's only fair maybe you have little background in programming or your schedule is tight for you, this and that, some one or two issues there. So you go with the managed hosting where the hosting provider automatically takes care of everything that is necessary for updates, maintenance, and security. And then we have the VPS hosting, the virtual private server hosting. So that one, a virtual server that mimics a dedicated server within a shared hosting environment. It offers more resources and greater control than shared hosting. So virtual, like virtual means it's not on you. Kind of. Let me look for a better word. So sometimes we have sometimes you have like you are using Windows on your machine, and then they say do you have a so you are planning on using a virtual server. So that one is kind of like it's not on the system, but it's on the system. So it's just okay. So that's the word mimic. So a server that mimics a dedicated server within a shared hosting environment. So that one mimics it to make it feel like it's the actual thing, even though it's not the actual thing. Yes. And so it offers more resources and greater control than shared hosting. So since it's just mimicking it and then it's not actually there, actually, yes, it's not actually there. It has more resources and greater control than shared hosting, which the shared hosting kind of uses all its resources to work on multiple websites. And then we have the cloud hosting. So websites are hosted on a network of interconnected servers, allowing for scalability and flexibility. Resources can be adjusted based on traffic demands. So cloud hosting, resources can be adjusted based on traffic demands. So traffic deals with maybe more visitors on your site. So when you have more visitors on your site, that's called traffic. So websites are hosted on a network of interconnected servers. So the servers are connected. Like this is connected, A is connected to B, B to C, C to D, allowing for scalability and flexibility. Scalability deals with being able to expand. Flexibility deals with being able to adjust itself. And then, so if say uh, server, so website B needs more resources, and then A, C, D don't need more resources. This type of hosting adjusts itself for B to have more resources so that the others can use less resources so the system runs smoothly. So that has to deal with the cloud hosting. Now I take home assignments. What are the importance of web hosting? What makes web hosting very important? Because in as much as codes are written, they need to be put out there. So just go and research on what makes it very important for us to host web pages. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you learned something today. So in our next interaction, we'll be going on to the codes, the practical aspects, where we'll start writing some one or two codes and see how we will take it from there. It's all little by little. I'm just hoping we all get to be on board and then learn new things and encourage each other for the journey ahead. Thank you very much. You all have a nice day.